Since this is a large section, it is nice to have a couple of sentences before the first subsection. Maybe something just to set the scene and refocus the reader, such as, in this section, potential factors that may influence the exam result will be considered. The same structure template can be used for each of the bivariate subsections. For the bivariate analysis, you are looking to comment on whether a relationship exists between the various factors and the exam results. Where relationships do exist, you also want to comment on the strength of the relationship. You will need to include 3 subsections: impact of gender on exam result, impact of double degree study on exam result, and impact of progressive assessment on exam result. And so for this final subsection, we will include the 3 progressive components. And for each of the subsections, we will still need to follow the report writing conventions. And so a good template is intro sentence, chart or table, features, interpretation and analysis, and then a final concluding sentence. Since we have already spent a fair bit of time talking about how to write sections in the previous workshops, for this workshop we're going to think more about Excel. But remember, in this part of the report, we are trying to see what factors, if any, influence exam results achieved. Okay, so thinking about Excel. For the impact of gender on exam result, the first thing to think about is what kind of variables we have. The exam result is numerical and gender is categorical. For this mixed bivariate combination, we can use both the rows and columns of a pivot table, making sure that the exam result is in groups. This can then be turned into either a clustered, stacked, or 100% stacked bar chart. You will need to think about which one is most appropriate. So the idea is you can try these options to see which you think shows the relationship, if any, between these variables, and therefore specifically answer the question of whether there is a relationship between gender and exam result. Of course, as the chart you will create in doing this will have a lot of information within it, it is also useful to actually begin this subsection with something more basic to help us see if there are any differences between the genders. We have a whole lot of exam results. We have analysed them overall in the previous section. But in thinking about gender, we can look at some of our basic numerical measures, but just on the specific exam results for one gender at a time. For example, we can see whether the average exam result for males is the same or different to the average exam result for females. Well, we could just sort the whole data set so that the exam results for different genders are grouped together and then just use individual average formulas on the groups. We can do this analysis more quickly by creating a pivot table. Put gender into the rows area and exam result into the values area, and then change the field settings so that you calculate an average rather than a count. You may also want to look at the standard deviation for each gender. The idea is that you could use these averages from each gender to see any initial difference, and then expand on this by looking at the more full distribution chart created earlier. You should discuss the trends and your conclusion. You would then go through a similar process for the impact of double degree study on exam result. For the impact of progressive results on exam result, we have 2 numerical variables in each case, and so we should be using a scatter plot to visualize. As we have 3 progressive result components, they can each be plotted against the exam results. It is useful to put all 3 scatter plots together in this subsection and to talk about the results as a group. Also have a think about what measure is useful for this kind of bivariate data. Think about what trends you see, describe, and also discuss whether it is expected or not and why that is. This subsection can then be extended by looking at the strongest progressive result relationship and then adding in either gender or double degree study as a third variable. This is trivariate analysis, and so it allows us to consider 2 possible influencing factors for exam results at the same time. From an analysis point of view, you'll need to think about your conclusions from the previous two subsections and then use this part to extend that analysis. In terms of the Excel, we have two numerical variables and we're adding in one categorical. And so we can visualize by extending our scatter plot type chart to include a third variable. We create this new scatter plot by creating different colors for the categories, and so we end up being able to see the relationship, if any, between, for example, quiz result and exam result for each gender. You do not need to include every possible trivariate analysis combination in the report. The idea is to explore the possible trivariate relationships and then decide what to include in your extension for this subsection.